Good afternoon, everybody. I'm just going to sort me screen out, so hopefully you can see what I'm up to. So this weekend, basically got a prep weekend. Got up nice and early, done all my short kits and all my long kits, because sort of the matches that I've got coming up next, Monk Hall, and I needed to redo all my short kits, like changing the elastics. Some of them are okay, but some of them were a bit dodgy, so ripped all them out, cleaned all my top kits, marked them all up, and then I had to do the same with my long kit. So marked all of those up. I've been meaning to do it for ages, and then put me elastics in because I've got sort of the fish sale final coming up soon, but we're filming a live evening match at Meadowlands, so I know they pull like mad there, so I wanted to make sure all my elastics good, and that way I've got sort of, I don't know, probably 4 or 5 matches to get it nicely bedded in for the fish sale final. So hook wise, I've been doing plenty of those. I can go and grab you my boxes just to show you now. So just give me 1 second. Should have thought about this before we started. Sort of, if I can grab them. So every now and again, I just like to sit down and just try and get as much prep done, sort of have a couple of weekends off. It's nice for me, to be honest, because I'm out so much. And then I can sit down a couple of weeks just to focus on all my gear, and then it's done. And also it's sort of a nice respite for me as well, to be honest. And when it's this hot outside, as we all know what it's been like sort of the last week or so, it's been unbearable. And I don't want to go and fish 6-hour match just flicking a rig around at mugging fish. So I thought a couple of weekends, sort all my stuff out, but I've done the majority of my pole fishing Hooklength, so just like topping them up as I'm going. So if I talk you through them, I'll start off with my banded Hooklengths first, just so you can see them. But so we've got a comment. So 1 second, we've actually got a couple of comments. So this one, let me see, because this is a different one than how I normally do it. So I've got to figure out how to do it. So I'm sure, I thought if I clicked on it, you'd be able to see. Saying that, you might be able to actually see this. You probably can. I'm just being Paul. So our first comment, walk yourself well. That's from Joe, better half. Look at you doing it all by yourself. Whoop, whoop. That's actually me getting this set up. That's what she means. So she's actually in Weymouth. They've gone looking for some houses because her mum and dad are thinking about moving down there. So she's gone down there today. I'm going to grab her, I think she said about 6:10 from the train station. So I dropped her off nice and early this morning. And normally what that means when Joe goes, that I get chasing status on as loud as it possibly goes, but I've been listening to it all morning, so I thought I'd do this instead. And then we've got one from Paul Carpenter. Afternoon, sir. Good, sir. Afternoon, Paul. I hope you're keeping well. And then one's from Julian. Afternoon, Paul. Afternoon, Julian. Hope you're keeping well. So talk you through my hooks, and then we can get started as such. But any questions you got, fire them over, especially when it comes to your prep, because I've got all my bits and pieces near me. So any questions or whatever, just send them over. But my first Hooklength box, again, I know I talk about this a lot on Match Focus. I quite enjoy doing prep. And I think what it is for me, it all stemmed really from Whiteacres. So when I was going down there for sort of 2 weeks back to back, your gear takes an absolute hammering where you're fishing for 5 days and then the weekend off. But it's not really off for me because, say, the last few years I went there, on the Saturday I try and catch up with mid-match reports for Match Focus, and then Sunday I done my prep, tried to spend a bit of time with Joe, and then the next week, bang, you're back at it again. And because you needed so much kit down there, the variations, I always just tied a lot up. And then almost since Whiteacres, although I don't go there now, where I'm coaching and then I fish festival, I don't know what my hand's doing here, that's just one of my little quirks. But where I fish my festivals and then we're filming and then I do a bit of coaching. To be honest, I've just kept to this same way of doing it, to be honest. So that's what I mean at the moment. I'm just literally tidying everything up, because that way when I'm away, I haven't got to think, oh, I've got coaching, I've got no hooks, or oh, I need to film, I've got no hooks. So again, tailor this to suit how much you go and how much you need. What I think you don't want to do is have stuff that you don't use. and I've done this in the past, Joe will probably comment, where she's come down again, normally at this sort of time where I have my little break, I spend half of the time breaking stuff down that I never use and then retie stuff up, and then 6 months time I break it all down again. So my way of doing it now, I'm going to try my best to show you on the camera. So on this side here where my finger is, if I can line it up, even though I might not be able to see, you'll be able to see that there's sort of 2 pins of each hook length line, if that makes sense. So me lighter banded hook lengths, 014 and 16 Super LWG. I don't use anything lighter than that, to be honest. If I show you again, give me a second. If I can find them, they'll be down here somewhere. So these are like the old hook length boxes. You know, this one is way old. You'll be able to see sort of all the mould and clag on it. But that one there, I've got some sort of 20s to 012 and an 18 to 012. And I don't know when I tied these up, probably 5-6 years ago at least, it's got to have been. And I never used them. So when I changed from all sort of like my little hook length boxes to the ones I'm showing you now, I'll just scooch my chair up. Basically, anything that I thought, do you know what? I can't remember the last time I used it. I haven't tied it up. So with these ones, what I've done is, instead of having lots of pins with loads of hooks that I'm never going to use, I just do the ones that I know I do use, if that makes sense. So the top one is a 16 to 014, 16 Super LWG to 014. The next 2 pins are 16 Super LWG to 016, again 2 pins. And then the ones below that is an 18 Super MWG to 018. And the top 2, I've got Drennan microbands on them. And then below that, for like my Super MWGs, to be honest, I used to use a microband, but I use an 8mm screttings a lot on the hook. So I've changed those ones to a mini band. And I'll just be honest, all of the time I'm using a Super LWG. I think a microband's perfect, because when you're using that sort of hook, I'm going to say, like, you can use an 8mm every now and again, but more often than not, you're going to be using 4 and 6mm hard pellets on the hook. Whereas when I'm starting to use a Super MWG, so like proper carp hook, my little bent nail of a hook, that's when I use them in mini bands, because more often than not, I'm going to be fishing 6mm, but more often than not, it's 8mm screttings or 8mm coppings. And then with these ones, I haven't, even though I've got a 2-inch pin, obviously you can see there's no hooks there, because I don't use them very often, to be honest. I've just got these tied at 3, 4 and 5 inches, because again, those are the ones I use the most. Very, very rarely. Look, Joe, being a good boy. That's not to say I haven't had any Red Bull, because I have. But yes, I just tie them at the lengths that I know I'm going to use, again, rather than thinking I'll just tie some at 2-inch. It's pointless, because I don't fish pellet shallow very often. And when I'm fishing banded caster, again, I like to hook my band, which I know a lot of you from Match Focus would have seen. I just like hooking my band, so I use the Super LWG for that when I'm fishing, like for F1 shallow. But again, if I was going somewhere, say like Lindholm, where I might be fishing pellet shallow, but again, I haven't got that booked in my diary. But if I had that, say the July festival that I used to fish, then that's where all these little hook length boxes for me come into it. If I'm going somewhere I think I want to fish pellet shallow, then I'll just sit and I use one of these little boxes rather than a big box. So again, I don't know where they are. Let me find them for you, because I know they're here somewhere. It might be the carry-on. No. Can't find them. There they are. Found them now. So, give me a second. If I scooch back over. So again, these ones here, what I mean for like my pellet shallow. So I've got 16s to 014s in 2 and 3 inches, and a 16s, again, Super LWG to 016 in a 2 and a 3 inch. So if I was going somewhere like Lindholm, where I'm going to want to fish pellet shallow, or I was going to a venue where I wanted to fish, say, pellet shallow, with banded caster, I really like hooking the band, because again, I touch on it a lot of the time. When I'm going F1 fishing, I don't really know whether I want to fish maggots or casters. And some venues, a banded caster's best on the hook, but then other places I've been to, a worm's so much better than a banded caster. So with these ones, really, you'll be able to see like 16 Super LWG, big bands, and I just chuck that in the carry-all if I was going somewhere where I was predominantly fishing pellet shallow. But again, I'm not going to use them on a week-to-week basis. So rather than taking them with me when it rains, your hooks get wet, and then you've got to dry them all out. With those ones, I just keep it in, you know, like almost like a little bespoke box, and just keep them to one side. But that's me, like my lighter banded hook clamps, and then my stronger banded hook clamp should be able to see there. So basically it's set up the same, like no over here, no 2-inch hook clamps because I'm not going to use them, but I like setting my hook box up this way because then if I ever do want them, I've got the place to be able to put a few, and I always set them up like this now. So I've got 2 and a 5-inch and then a 3 and a 4-inch. And if ever anyone wants to use these boxes, one thing you'll be able to notice is like the pins here, they don't touch the pins this side. And because that way, when you close it, it actually shuts. Whereas if you put the pins sort of opposites each other, it just doesn't shut as well. So you're going to basically buy, I think it's a 6 or an 8-inch, 6-inch hook length box, this little Guru one. It's unbelievable, to be honest. I've had these for ages. But if you set it up like that, 2 and 5-inch at the top, and 3 and 4-inch at the bottom, or you can have obviously 6-inch hook clamps at the top. I don't use 6-inch hook clamps, so I always just set them up like this. But with this one, you'll be able to see, oh, let me get the camera, so you can see 020 and 022. So I use predominantly a 16 Super MWG to 020. That's my main hook length. And then the ones below are sort of almost Meadowlands hook lengths where you go in and you know they just pull like absolute luno. So that's a 14 Super MWG to 022. And trust me, when you go there and hook one, you're so glad you tied them up because they want to jet ski you all around the lake. But because I'm not going to use a lot of those, I've only got 2 pins tied. Whereas me 020 to a 16 Super MWG, I'm going to tie a few. And again, when you're tying your 16 Super LWGs, you'll be able to fit a lot more on each pin. So at the top there, you'll be able to see that I've got 5 pins of those. And it sounds a lot, but you can probably only get 8 hooks on each pin. So it's not that many, if that makes sense. So again, top 5-inch, 3-inch and 4-inch. So those basically my banded hooks I carry. And then moving over to me straight hooks, if that makes sense. So this one is like my winter hook length box. So I've got my F1 pellet hooks and my lighter, smaller Super LWGs. Again, I take this a lot in the winter time. So the top ones I'm going to say are more my F1 hooks. The bottom hooks, the ones I use are gold, where you're going to hook some massive carp. And basically, if the float goes under, it's going to be £2 plus. So starting at the top, I've got a 20 F1 pellet hook to 010. I don't fish any heavier. I'm not going to fish any lighter than 010. And then I've got an 18 F1 pellet hook to 010. And then on my 5-inch hook clamps, these are. And then I've got a 16 to 010. And that's my bread dobbin hook. I've got a 16 to 012. Again, that's more a bread dobbin hook if I was more looking to hook some carp. But that's the hook that I use a lot when I'm waggler fishing at Gold, fishing with live maggots, fishing for skimmers and an odd carp. And then below that, I've got a 20 Super LWG to 012, and that's probably my favourite hook that I use at Gold in the wintertime, sort of a maggot and a fluoro pinky. And you think at 20, that's really small for them massive carp. But trust me, you get so many more bites on that hook. So I tie those up. And then I've got an 18 to 012 and then an 18 to 014. And they are my winter hook lengths. And again, if I drew a good peg on Syndicate, say 132, again, I'll just scooch my chair forward. That hook, especially if a few carp rock up late, I'm still going to keep my elastic the same, sort of yellow hydro in a long kit. But when them carp rock up, an 18 to 014 is absolutely perfect. You'd be amazed at how hard you can actually like pull back, if that makes sense, on that 014. You're never going to get broke in the wintertime. Whereas when I go down on my 3-inch hook clamps, a 20 to 010 F1 pellet hook, I don't really use that, to be honest. I'll only normally use an 18 to 010 and 16s to 012. Again, in my 3 and my 4 inch, I don't have any 16s to 010 because I'm never going to use that. I'm only going to use it for dobbing. So I've got 2 pins of those. So that 16 F1 pellet hook to 012, I love that hook when I'm fishing sort of deep, shallower maggots, or in the wintertime when I'm fishing micros and expanders. That's sort of the perfect hook, if that makes sense. And I fish 012, whereas if I want it a bit lighter, I don't really want to use a 16 because I think it's too big. So I just use an 18 to 010. Again, going into our Super LWGs, a 20 to 012, I'm not going to use that in a 3-inch hook length, so I don't tie any. And then me 18 Super LWGs to 012 and 014, I will use those. And then in my 4-inch version, I've got a few of all of them tied. Again, I'm not going to use loads of them, but it just gives me that option. I'm more often than not going to be using a 4-inch hook length than a 3-inch hook length. My 3-inch hook lengths are more for what I'm going to say is like my little 3B8 Winter Maggie or 4B10 Winter Maggie strung out sort of deep shallow. So again, I don't tie them now for the sake of time. And then this is sort of like my main summer hook length box. So over here, you'll be able to see like let me see if I can line it up on me now, just get used to it. So at the top, if it focuses, so that way, that's the way, isn't it? Yeah, over here a bit. So at the top, I've got 2 pins of 16 Super LWG to 014. Again, I use a lot of those. A 16 Super LWG to 016. Again, I use a lot of those. And then going further down, the next pin of 016 is a 14 Super LWG. And then 018, that's a 14 Super LWG again. And then moving further down, that 020 is a 12 Super LWG. And that's what I like for sort of fishing in the margins for my main fishing, if that makes sense. And then I've got a separate hook length box. Sorry, again down here. And this is sort of next on my list after my method feeder hook lengths. And this is a 12 XS spade. That is a proper bent nail of a hook. And again, these are for when you're really sort of bagging. So the top one I need to tie, which is a 12 XS spade to 024. Again, these are for Meadowland, so when we're going filming. And then below that, I've got a 12 XS spade to 022. And those ones you see, I've got quite a few on the pins there because I do use a few of those if it's proper, bagging fishing. But at the moment, the ones that we're doing at the moment with some method feeder hook length box, you'll be able to see there, maggot method feeder. I don't have any bands tied, short. I'll show you my banded hook lengths in a minute. But when I'm fishing a method feeder personally, more often than not, I'm going to be doing it in shallow water. So that 14, again, you'll be able to see is 1 hook size to 1 main line. So a 14 to 018. That's all I use. I don't use any other hook. So I don't use a 12, I don't use a 16, and I don't tie to 016, I don't tie to 020. So with this hook, the most important thing I think is the sharpness of the hook. And they are so sharp, they're almost too sharp to be honest. So when I'm fishing a method feeder, especially when I'm fishing with maggots, as soon as I feel anything pinch on my maggot, I take my hook off and replace it. And it's not uncommon for me. If I have had, say, a good day on a method feeder, I might use 10 or 15 hook lengths. I might not even catch a fish on it, especially when I'm fishing to islands or upper banking, where a lot of the time the bottom's hard. You've only got to dink your hook on the way back. And if it's not sticky sharp, like razor sharp, I'll just change my hook. And I personally believe that's my biggest edge when it comes to fishing with a method feeder. The biggest thing is being the sharpness of the hook. So these Kaizen hooks, I know a load of people use them for a pole, but for me, they're too sharp for the pole. I think the points go over on them too quick. Whereas a Super LWG, they're razor sharp still. You wouldn't feel any difference when you're hooking your bait. But I think the nature of the point, because it's fatter for longer, if that makes sense, the points don't tend to go over on themselves. Whereas this Kaizen hook here, that one, I just think it's the best hook for dead maggots. Again, if you're worried about, a few people have messaged, I just use a spade Kaizen, and I can show you how I tie it in a minute. But if you're struggling to get the knot right and you feel like it's slipping, then yes, you could use an eyed hook. But I've just used these forever. And I think biggest thing in fishing is being confident. I don't get broke. Again, with my hook lengths, because it's the sharpness of the hook that's so important to me, it's very rare that I'm going to catch more than, say, 6 fish on one hook length before I change it, because I want to use the sharpest hook possible. Whereas if you was catching, say, 20 or 30 fish on one hook length, then I think that's when you're 18, you're going to get broke on it, because you've only got such a short little hook length anyway, anywhere between sort of 3 and 4 inches. Once that's been ragged a few times, it's going to get weak. But because I don't fish a hook length for many fish, if that makes sense, it lasts really well. And then on to me, like if I want to fish, say, a bayonet, to fish wafters in the winter time, I've got 2 longer hook length boxes. So this one's got my bands in it. I can use a band. So these are sort of like my bomb hook lengths. So I've got 12-inch, 8-inch, and 6-inch, and they're quite simple. I've got basically 3 pins tied to a 10 QM1 and 024, and then I've got 3 pins tied to a 12 QM1 and 020. That's it. That's all I use. And again, been down the road of having sort of 14 QM1, 16, and I never use them. So again, if I was going to say Jenny's at Whiteacres, where you're fishing for them little Crassio, I'd just tie up a little hook length box rather than having millions tied up. I just time as I'm going, basically. So we've had a couple more questions down here, and then I can talk you through, obviously, tying this method feed hook length. So this one's from Daz Kennedy. Do you use any flavourings or sprays in your fishing? So the only flavouring I use, I'll be honest, is there's this red dye from Mainline. I think it's called Krill. And the only reason I ever use that is not for the flavouring. It's actually for the colour. So when I was doing my bit of paste fishing, one of my best mates, Pen Wrighting, he's unbelievable at paste fishing. He does a lot of it. And he said to me, when you're fishing sort of your normal ground bait, whether it be brown, whether it be green, whether it be like an orangey colour, when you feed in a lot of bait, it doesn't stand out enough. Whereas if you use sort of a bright red paste, so your same mix that you're using for paste, just dye it red, that can work so much better. And I'll be honest, I don't do a lot of it, but more often than not, when I'm fishing with paste, I'm feeding like a lot of ground bait in the edge, and you need a big standout hook bait. Having that same ground bait that you're feeding, rather than using that as paste on your hook, using a dyed red paste just works so much better. So that's, hand on heart, the only flavouring I've ever thought that's made a big difference. I know some other lads, again, going on to Pem, I don't do that much carp fishing anymore. I do it more so in the winter time rather than in the summer. But when I was going to Willingshurst, I don't know if it was the first fish sale final or the second fish sale final. I know what Pem's massive on is using salmon oil on his pellets. So when he was going to Togba Manor, absolutely taking it apart, catching 1,000 pound of fish, he was adamant that made a massive difference. So whether that's the slick in the water, but sort of putting a lot on your pellets, I know he said that was important, or what he felt was important. But hand on heart, I don't use flavourings a lot, because I just think if I want to eat a steak, I want to eat a steak. I don't want to eat a strawberry. Whereas if I want to eat a strawberry, don't want it to taste the steak. I just believe the fish know what they want. So when they tune into luncheon meat, they want what's in the luncheon meat. So that's why they're choosing to pick it up, because when it's on, it's unbelievable. So like tunnel would be a classic example. They get fed maggots all winter long, and then all of a sudden, what it is, whether there's not enough protein in the maggots, they just don't want to eat them. They don't really want to eat casters. Worms are another classic for that. So when it comes off of maggots and they go on to meat, if you've fished maggots, which I do a lot, it's like they don't want to eat them. You're throwing something in and they don't respond to it. Whereas you move, 2 meters away. So it's not, you're in the same peg. You throw in 3 bits of meat and you catch them. So it's got to be the meat that they want to eat. Otherwise, you'd have just caught them on maggots. Again, I think when I've been to Monk Hall recently, you can fish maggots and casters, and you'll catch F1s, you'll catch eyed, you catch everything that's in the lake, and an odd carp. You throw hard pellets or fish pellets, all of a sudden now, when you get a bite, it's from a carp. And yet you could change that line. I've done this in the past when we've been filming, where I've started off on pellets, caught carp, thought, I don't know if it's right or not, changed to live maggots because catch well like that at tunnel, all of a sudden stop getting bites, change back to pellets and start catching carp. So I think the fish, they know what they want to eat, and that's what you feed the bait basically that they want to eat. One thing I will say though is I think colours are far more important than the flavour. That's my honest opinion. So again, this year at Gold, a bomb was unbelievable, so much better than you could fish a method feeder. Whether you got micros around your feeder, same wafter on the hook, and you hardly get a bite. Yet you feed a few 8mm coppins, not soaked, rock hard 8mm pellets, bearing in mind it's freezing, and chuck a wafter over it and catch big carp. Yet you fish a method anywhere near it, and it's almost like they don't want to eat it. That you don't get any bites on it. Yet a lot of the time you're fishing shorter on a bomb because that's where you can loose feed your pellets, and it's unbelievable. And one thing I will say, this winter just gone at Gold, it was Jason Morgan that really opened my eyes up to it. And when I looked and thought, right, I know what he's doing, and he had this two-tone Ringers 6mm on the hook. I think it was pink and yellow, I want to say. The difference that hook bait made, if I hadn't have seen it and been doing that fishing all of the time, and then put that into my own fishing, i.e. fishing other hook baits and not getting a bite, you chuck that out and the rod gets dragged in. There's no coincidence. So I don't think it's the flavourings, if that makes sense. But I think the colour is really, really important. And that's what I would say, that's the biggest thing I'd focus on. But when it comes to sort of your normal bait, they want to eat what they want to eat. So I don't try and make my pellets taste of something else, if that makes sense. They want to eat pellets, you feed them the pellets. They know what it is because that's what they're tuning themselves into. But I definitely believe colour is so important. And this winter, I'll be honest, really opened my eyes up to it. I'm not going to say I'm ever a dismissive angler, if that makes sense, but I do believe there is a much bigger skill in certain methods. And I honestly, hand on heart, if you just said to me, fishing a bomb, can you be doing it that much worse than anyone else? I'd have said, I'll be honest, I don't believe there's as much, there is not as much skill in it as fishing 16 metres loose feeding maggots, flicking your bait, flicking your rig a certain distance past your bait, and the float you use, where you can use a wire stem float for argument's sake, where it's flat calm and you hardly get a bite, yet you use a carbon stem float. So my normal floats for Gold is a Gloucester, a perfect Gloucester, so a wire stem fibre bristle float, and then the carbon float is a 1.5mm solid bristled maggot. So in anything, the bristled maggots is slightly thicker. So a carbon stem, a 1.5mm bristle, rather than a wire stem and say a 1mm bristle. Both solid bristles, if that makes sense. Yet I'd hardly get a bite on my Gloucester, which is a wire stem flow and a thinner bristle. Yet I go on my thicker bristle flow, but a carbon stem, and get a bite chuck on it. It's unbelievable the difference it makes. So if you'd have said to me before, I think with bomb fishing, there's as much skill in it, I would have said no. Without being horrible, no chance. It cannot be done, because trying to fish 16 metres and hold your rig still and be able to flick your rig in and loose feed your bait just short of your flow and not loose feed past it, I'd have said no chance. And I'm of that opinion still. I believe there's more skill in the pole fishing element than there is in the bomb fishing. But the hook bait choice on your bomb is the skill. That's where the skill is. And that's the biggest thing that I would hand on heart say I've learned this year. I've had that mindset a little bit too much in the fact that your setup's your setup. You're either fishing on your bait, past your bait, or nowhere near your bait. But you could have the wrong size wafter, the wrong hook on it, almost the wrong bayonet, but the biggest thing is the wrong colour hook bait or the wrong size hook bait. You chuck it out and they're enter fishing your peg. That's what you say. There is not, because you don't get line. It's not like you've got anything to work with. You know, you chuck past your bait and you get odd little sign. It's like, well, they're on my bait. A lot of the time, you're just waiting for a bite and they're there. But if you didn't have that hook bait on, the difference, well, you might as well chuck it on the road behind you because you would not get a bite. And I think that's the biggest thing that I genuinely feel hand on heart that I've learned this winter time. And again, I think it's the colour, the size and the colour element. Are they willing to pick it up or not? So that's where I would say is the real advantage. But hopefully I haven't waffled on too much, but I want to highlight the importance of what you've got on it. So that was my honest opinion before and my honest opinion now. So hopefully that helps. So this is from Steve. Afternoon, buddy. Home alone. Yep, the boss is on her way back. She's popped to Weymouth for the day. I'm going to pick her up. I think she said about 6:10, and then we can have some tea together. So that's an 8-inch box. Okay, perfect. Steve said that's an 8-inch Hooklength box. So I thought it was a 6-inch one, but yes, that makes sense that it is an 8-inch Hooklength box for anyone that's interested. They're brilliant. Absolutely love them, to be honest. So what do you tie up for waggler fishing? So give me 1 second. So I've got me waggler Hooklength thing here. I've actually got my box. So I thought I'd bring this over because this is what I want to show you again, quickly touching on our wafter. A 12 to 020, you'll be able to see my little bayonets there. That was important, I think, having the silicone on the back of your hook. A 12 to 020 was definitely better than fishing 022 and a 10 QM1. But more so, I think, when I was fishing on the middle leg, because that turned into what I thought was going to be more pole fishing, but it turned out to be the same as Golden Syndicate, just a lot more bites. There was more F1s. But that hook length, 12-inch hook length, definitely seemed to be the optimum when I was there. So going through me waggler hook length box, you'll be able to see there. So this is exactly what I've got tied. So if I put them all up, you'll be able to see. So those two are empty, nothing on those. So that one is an old waggler hook length. So this is 2 foot, 12 QM1 to 020. And the reason I tied those up was because when we filmed a live match for us, so on Match Focus, and I think I drew, where did I draw now? Peg 38 on the Gold Lake. They were swirling for the bait, and it's so rare they ever do that. And fishing sort of an 18-inch hook length that day, but so many of them were pulling me rod. And I think that QM1 is so good when the fish are pulling your rod. But there's got to be a lot of fish in your peg to be able to use that hook length. That's the opinion that I've come to. Whereas the ones that I tie now, so that is what I would say is my main hook length. So a 16 Super MWG, again, that same hook, nothing changes, to 018. If I didn't know what to use, that would be the hook and the hook length that I would use. Again, if you was going to, so you're watching this and you're seeing it's 3 foot, I think at Gold, that is 2.5 to 3 foot from your float has always been the best way of catching them at Gold. And more often than not, you cast a million times, and the only time you get a bite is the second your float lands. So within 10 seconds, not even that, probably 6 seconds of your float landing, twitching it into your bait, you don't catch many. You catch 99.9% of them. You chuck out, the float lands, hold the rod, anticipate the bite, or you chuck out, put it on your rod rest and go on a feed, and they pull the rod. So that's when you get your bite. But even though you're catching them really quickly, when the float lands, as your hook bait's falling, and they probably, 18-inch deep max, they won't come any closer to your flow than 2.5 to 3 foot. So that's why they're all tied at 3 foot. If I want to fish a little bit further than that, then I'd just put 2 number 8 cubes underneath me waggler, because I just like a float stop either side of my snap link swivel. I know some have like 1 above and 3 below, but I just prefer like my number 8 cubes. The least amount of crap I want to say around the flow, it just basically doesn't tangle. And I use 5 pound main lines, 5 pound ST. You've got to be careful with it, if that makes sense. Set your clutch, and again, anyone who watches our live matches, you'll be able to see it gold. It's not like I'm really, I'm pulling them, but you've just got to maintain that line. It won't last like a 6 pound line or an 8 pound line. But to cast sort of your little dobbin flows, which more often than not, they're crafty there, they've heard that big float too many times and they just ignore it. So you've got to use that light main line. You don't get broke on it, but you just got to change it regularly. My little rule is when I go to tie my figure of 8 knot to attach my hook length to, if I pull it, when your line's good, you could pull it as hard as you want it, cut your finger off it and never snap. But the second I'm tying it and I'm pulling it and it snaps, I know I need to replace that line. So what I'll do, I'll just get a bit of Tipex, wipe it. So you've got your handle or your reel, suit where the carbon is. I'll just get a bit of Tipex out of my box and wipe it on that rod. Then I know when I get home, that's the line that I've got to change. But in my opinion, I think I catch so many more fish using a 5 pound line rather than a 6 pound line. It's worth it to me. But anyway, back onto the hook lengths. But I think that's important when it comes to your waggler fishing. So that would be the one where I think, I don't know what to do. I've had it in the past where I've been using a 12 QM1, don't get a bite, change to a 16 Super MWG, and all of a sudden start getting bites. So again, I don't have an 18, I don't have a 40, that's it. So I've got that one if I'm a bit unsure. But if, and it has been good at gold recently, them big units, so I've just upped it because that's where I do most of my waggler fishing. So again, just like our pole fishing, sorry, I've got itchy nose, I use a 16 Super MWG to 020, and that one's to 2 foot. And then I've got 1, 2, so I've got 2 at 2 foot, and then I've got 2 at 3 foot that you'll be able to see there. So again, same hook, same line, nothing changes. I just make sure now that the ones that I want to use, the ones that I use all of the time, I haven't got, I'll tie some 14s. No, because I'm not going to use them. I'll tie an 18 up. No, I won't use it. So again, when it comes to your prep, I'd rather have more of what I know I'm going to use week in, week out. And it only comes through experience. And again, depending on where you're fishing, I've got a lot of stuff tied up. I've got a lot of everything that I've got tied up now is what I use, if that makes sense. So again, I've got a few more hooks in here. So these ones are actually from Todber Manor when I was going there. So it's quite a while ago. But I've got, they're all 12 QM1. So I've got 020 to a 12 and a 10 mil hair, 020 and a 12 and a 12 mil hair, and then 020 and a 12 and a 14 mil hair for fishing sort, bomb and bread, punched me. Again, this hook length box was tailor-made for that because the 12-inch hook length, as mad as it sounds, was too long, and an 8-inch hook length was too short. So a 10-inch was perfect. So rather than having, I've got my big hook length boxes, which is my main hook lengths. Again, if I'm going somewhere that I know I want a certain length of hook length, certain hook, certain length of hair, then I just use my old little boxes for that. So that's that one in there. This one is for the rare occasion where I'm fishing live baits, if that makes sense, or maggots and stuff like that. So again, at gold, sort of a maggot feeder was working well, and then below it I've got a few big hooks that I just tied purely for when we went and filmed the live match at the Glebe. So I've just got a few straight hooks tied. Again, I don't use many of them. And then in here is my last one that I use. So they're all me. Just knock my drink out of the way. Ooh. So you'll be able to see those ones are like a 10 QM1 for punch meat, all different sizes. So I've got 10 mil hair all the way down to, so I've got 10, 12, 14 and 16. And then I've got, that's 0.24 and a 10 QM1 down to a 16 length hair, 16 mil hair. And then I've got a 12 QM1 to 0.20 in a 10 and a 12 mil, again for like bomb and bread. And then below that, you'll be able to see, obviously, I need to sit there and retie them up. But they're my 10 QM1s to my bayonet and a 12 QM1 to a bayonet. Those were the ones that I haven't got round to retying yet, but those were all like my winter fishing. So what I do, I pop that down so I can get it out of the way. But again, lots of hooks tied, but I do lots of different styles of fishing. So where are we to? Let's have a sip of our drink. So hopefully, Julian, that gives you a bit of advice when it comes to sort of your waggler hook lengths. And then Steve wanted perfect Gloucesters. Any clues as to where I might get some? So Fishing Streams you can get them from Benwick Sports, Steve. At the Fishing Stream, never have the size I want in stock. And then the Fishing Streams call them Steve. And then Steve's the Fishing Stream will do after I move house during the week. Love the hollows. Take a break from packaging at it since 5 a.m. One thing I will say is I know that Guru, when I was there, they had a float that was basically identical to a perfect Gloucester, and I have seen them advertised. Whether they're for sale or not at the moment, but that steel wire stem and that hollow solid plastic bristle, like fibre bristle, basically identical to a Gloucester, so that you'll be able to see the video on Guru's YouTube page, where I'd done a bit of filming at Gold, and I got given some prototypes that day. And I basically, with all my Gloucesters that are all tied up, I took one of my Gloucesters off. I think it would have been a 0.75 because that's the only one that I use there. That's my best one, the 0.75 Gloucester and a 4x16 Maggie. And then when it's windy, I normally use 0.75 Gloucester and a gram Gloucester, and still set my Maggie rig up just if it's windy. But I offered that one. Basically, I took my Gloucester off, put that on, and it was identical, barring a number 13 cube. So I know that they're made off that pattern, if that makes sense. They're just such a popular pattern. When they come out or not, I don't know. But that's the ones that I'd probably look at using, because you will be able to get them for the foreseeable, if that makes sense. I don't know. Again, I've been trying to look for some Gloucesters and I can't find any. The last few that I got, again, good friend of mine, Callum Dix, he had some kicking around and he gave me some. So I was, massive thanks to Callum for that. But that's the float that I'll end up looking at using, because, again, I know it's basically identical to a Gloucester. So I just don't know when they're coming out. Again, if you wanted a date on when they were coming out, best person to message would probably be Adam Rooney on Facebook or Robbie Taylor, again on Facebook. They'll be able to tell you when they're coming out. But yes, the one that I used it all day. No sign of anywhere. They were really, really well made. And that when, excuse me, I know when that float comes out, that's what I just change your mind to, because I know I'll be able to get them for the future. So that's what I will say. So what we do is have a little bit of a tidy up, and then I can talk you through my tying the hook, if that makes sense. So I don't need those ones. I've got hook length boxes here, there and everywhere, so I don't need them hooks. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk you through how I tie my Eisen hook. One thing when it comes to how I tie my hook, I think the line that you use is really, really important. So if you're going to use a copolymer like Engage, you have to do more turns. Whereas the line that I've always used, I think it's called, what is it called? It's called a monofilament. So I never knew this, to be honest. So that is, if I can get 018, that one. So that is like the line, if I stop shaking, Shaky Stevens. So that one you'll be able to see is monofilament, and they tie totally different. So that's the line that I use all of the time, which is me tournament rig line. And I've been using this Supernatural for a while for me rig line. It's absolutely brilliant. But I'm sticking with me tournament for my hooks because all my hooks are tied with tournament. The only difference, really, big difference, is the price. So your rig line, obviously, your rig line is obviously quite expensive. You do get 150 meters, but to be fair, that one, I think your tournament, I want to say it's about 15 quid a spool, something like that. It's quite expensive. Whereas Engage is obviously the same material, if that makes sense. But I think, I want to say that's like 6 quid. So obviously it's a big difference in the price. But I've been using the Supernatural one for all my rigs for quite a while now, to be honest, since it's come out. And it's brilliant. But I haven't started using it for my hooks, for the reason being is all my hooks are tied with tournament. I've still got me little stash that I always keep, but that's what I will say when it comes to how I like tying my hook. It's important to use a monofilament line rather than a coated polymer, because that for me, I just can't get it to knot right. So I've got my weight, still got my mum's weighing scales. And then what I like to do when I'm tying my hooks, obviously I have my tunes on, which I've had on all day in my headphones. And what I do is I just sit down and basically tie my hooks up and then put them on a little bit of foam. And I'll be honest, I got this when I was decorating. So I think what it is, so if you imagine your wall, when they screed the floor, they put it in between the screed and the wall. That's where I got it from, if that makes sense. And I've got a big roll, but I've literally only got 2 bits left. So if anyone knows what it's called, I'd be very much appreciated, because I need a bit more. And then put my little weight on my foam. Now, when I'm tying 018, 020, 022, I use my £2 weight on my line because it don't move. Whereas if I was tying sort of 010, 012 up to 016, I just use my smaller weight on it, because you're not going to be locking it down as hard. So what I'm going to do is move all my clag out of the way so I can show you what you need. So firstly, you're going to want your line and your hooks. I'm going to tilt you so you can see what it is that I'm doing. So down there, so you'll be able to see I've got me 018 tournament. That's what I'm going to tie my hooks with. So just make sure that I've got a nice clean bit of line, and then I can trim it off like so. Put that in my little bin. And then I've got my hooks and I've got my pliers. So these pliers are from, where are they from? What's it called now? Hobbycraft. They're like 2 quid, but they're flat and they're quite wide. So they're not shop pliers, but they're flat inside, if that makes sense. But they're quite wide, which is what's important. So again, when it comes to tying your hook, this is personal, but I want to show you the way that I tie it. So first thing, I get my hook that I need, and I'm going to form a loop in my line and make sure that it's not twisted. You might struggle to see this with a black t-shirt, but then when I put the line through the hook, it's either side of my hook, if that makes sense. What I might do is I'm going to talk you through it, and then I'm going to show you closer so you can see what I mean. And then what I do is I fold the loops towards me with my fingers, if that makes sense. But the biggest thing is I've got my main line going through, back up, and then that bit, but it's not twisted. So now I go round my hook 6 times, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. You can do it 7 if you want. I normally do 6. And then I pinch it. What's important with this now is that you put the tag end through the loop away from yourself. Don't come back up. Push it through the loop away from yourself. And then I just gently open the fingers up and slide it down. And this is the bit that I think is important. So now I put my finger on the spade and make sure that the line is coming off the front of the spade, like so. And I don't overly pull it tight yet. So that's where I want my whippings to sit. So it comes off the front of the spade like so, and I don't pull it over the spade, so it's just basically lying on the shank of the hook. Then now with my pliers, with my tag end, I'm going to pinch my bit of line, and then above my hook, if that makes sense, here, I'm going to pull it tight with my fingers. So that's it. Now you can see, like, I cannot pull it any harder. So now that knot is locked down. And then with my pliers, I put it in the bend of the hook, again where it's flat. And now, off the front of the spade, I'm just going to pull it tight again and then release the tag end and just pull it 2 or 3 times. And then now, I'm going to trim this off. The knot is tied tight. So, like a mil or so gap, a mil or so tag. And then there you'll be able to see if it's hard. It's hard when you're shaky Stevens like me. So you'll be able to see that's my hook tied. And that's it. But it's not slipped up the spade. And that's because, obviously, I've tightened it down with my pliers. It's not going to slip. It can't slip. Tied it as tight as it'll go. Obviously, it's not going to snap. And then once I'm happy with it, so if I poke you back up a sec. So that way, using my pliers to obviously pull that tag end tight, if anything's going to snap, and if your hook's tied wrong, it's going to snap there. Or likewise, when you put the hook flat, so let me show you what I mean by this. So if you can see that, where my chin actually, will it be better there? There. Let me go a bit higher. So that's what I mean. That's where I put the hook when I'm pulling it tight onto the hook, if that makes sense. I'm not doing it, you know, obviously that way where I'm going to crush the hook. But tying it like that, it can't slip because I've tied it. When I put it tight, if it wasn't tied right, it'd snap, i.e. the line. And then again, when I put the hook in it and I hold the tag end with my thumb gently, just so I can lock it, and then as soon as I feel like it ain't moving, I release my thumb to let the tag go, and I just pull it 2 or 3 times. And then once I've released it, that's it. That knot can't slip now. And I think that's the biggest thing. When you're tying thick lines, like 016, 014, down to 010 is fine. It's never going to slip up your spade. Whereas when you start using 018, 020, 022, even 024, that's more likely when the knot's going to slip over and above the spade. But if you use mono line and use these pliers, and more, you know, how I tie it, you see what I mean? It's just locked in tight now. It cannot slide. It won't slip over your spade. Again, if you're tying a few and your hands get a bit sticky, just use a towel, wipe them on your shorts. But that is the way that I like to do it. So what I want to show you now, if I can, again, it's so hard to show you. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make my loop, put my hook in the middle of it, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut this off, just so you can see what I mean by like holding my loop, if that makes sense. So really hard to try and do it in, where can I do it best? My t-shirt might be best actually. But that's how I hold it, and then pinch that side, and then you see that the tag end is not twisted. See how the 2 bits of line are completely separate? So then when I do my whippings, let's do that, and then I'm going to talk you through like the last bit. If you put the tag end through the wrong way, it won't sit right. It's got to go downwards rather than back up towards you, if that makes sense. So again, fold my loop, my hook in the middle of it, my loop's coming towards me, and then I know that it's not twisted. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then now it feels so weird cutting with your wrong hand. So there, you see my loop. So let me try and do it in front of my t-shirt. So like that. So this, bearing in mind I'm facing it, so you're looking this way rather than you know, imagine like looking through my eyes, if that makes sense. So your tag end comes towards you and that way, if that makes sense, not that way. So where you're looking through the line that way. And then now as you pull it down tight, obviously this is where you want your weight to be able to keep it. So now what I do, if I can get it, so that be able to see that it's not right up to the spade, but that way, look, I can slide these whippings down the shank of the hook a bit, if that makes sense. So they're quite loosely on there. And then I just line it up. So with my finger, line it up so the line's coming off the front of the spade. And now, even if I pull it tight with my fingers, it ain't going to be tight, because I'd still be able to slide that whipping down. And that's where now using your pliers come in. So everything when it comes to hooks, personal preference, but I've just found when I use this line, the monofilament, whatever make you like using, you know, whatever brand you're happy with, if that makes sense. I just think what's important is the fact that it's mono rather than using like a coated polymer. If you use that coated polymer, I actually tied some hooks for Andy and I never have a problem with my hooks. And basically they all come unraveled. And the biggest thing is you need to do like 10 or 12 turns down it. I just think 6, 7 turns, the least amount of knot, the easier it is to constrict. But when you're tying that coated polymer, you need to do more turns and almost hold it and lock it. But again, if you're having problems, basically when you're tying your hooks, the biggest thing I would say is it might be the line. So that's my thing. You know, monofilament, whether that is your tournament rig line, again, like Guru, Supernatural, whatever one you like using. There's probably other brands out there. There will be other brands out there that sell it, but it's the one that you like tying. Say, I've been using that for me, for all my rigs. It's absolutely perfect. The only, you know, biggest reason I'm using my tournament is because I used Match Winner for, well, since it first came out, I've only ever used 2 lines, I'll be honest, for my hooks. And that was Match Winner and now tournament. And it's never let me down. So I can't change. The matter, you know, if that could cost 30 quid a spool, like I'm so confident with it, I'm never going to change. But the problem is when they discontinue something, are you going to like what they bring out in future? But me personally, I only ever use mono, whether I'm fishing 010, 020 odd. I did have a little spell of using this for me bomb hook length, so like fluorocarbon, so 022 pure, which is the fluorocarbon material for a 10 QM1, because it was the stiffness. And then I run out of that and couldn't find any, to be honest. And the only thing that I had was, where is it? It'll be here. Be in our little box of tricks somewhere there, 024 tournament. And I started using that, and you'll be able to see I ain't got much left. And since then, I've just used that for my 10 QM1. So, but that's the only thing that I would say I've ever personally used fluorocarbon for, was for my 10 QM1 and that 022. But now I'm so confident with me mono line, I just used the 024 tournament. But again, I've got some 023 Supernatural again for my 10 QM1s, because tournament was out of stock for a little bit. So I've got some of that for tying up me 10 QM1s. So similar, you know, 023, 024. Biggest thing is being stiff. So where are we to now then? Where are we to? A few are going to be like, you've been around Joe too long. So where are we? This one's from Bob. I feel for you. I fish on one of the few commercials in Spain, and the last 6 weeks it's average 35 degrees. That's warm. That's too warm, Bill. I couldn't do it. Honestly, it's so... That's probably the only thing where I'm a bit of a wimp with. As soon as it gets like 25 degrees, I've just got no interest whatsoever. saying that, if there was a match at Moncourt and it was like half hour away, I probably would go. But yeah, when it gets that hot, it's just not enjoyable for me. I'm sort of fair. What little hair I got, fair. I've never liked the hot weather, I'll be honest. It's just not enjoyable for me. The fish don't like it. I don't want to feed. I don't like being sat there sweating. I'd rather spend my time in front of a fan doing my prep. So yeah, I feel for you there. I think if it was like that, that's definitely where you're going to need to be fishing underneath an umbrella, but I just can't do that either. But yeah, that's too hot for me. So our next one's from Nigel. I find super pellet waggler hooks can be better than a QM1 if they're being thicky blighters. I know exactly what you're saying. I know what words you wanted to use, Nigel. Yeah, it's all about confidence. I had a go using them for like double pellet, but I'll be honest, that QM1 for me, I don't miss many bites on it. It's such a sticky, sharp hook. I think that's the biggest thing for me, I'll be honest. If you watch me fish, you probably think, Kyle, you know, I've changed your hook a lot. And that is genuinely what I think is one of my biggest advantages when it comes to me rod and line sort of bomb feeder fishing, is making sure that my hook is as sharp as it can be. And I know when you think about it, well, yeah, the cost of it, me Kaizens are £2.25. So if I use 20 in a match, £4.50. If I use QM1, say they're £3, £6. If I use 20 of them, I'd think nothing of having a pint and a half of casters and throwing them in the lake after I'd finish. But it's just weird how some people, you know, not bothered about throwing the bait in, which costs quite a lot of money. But yeah, if you said, oh, I've used 8 hooks, I'd be like, what? That's sort of a waste of money. But the only thing that matters, especially when you're ledgering, well, you know, whether you're pole fishing, waggler fishing, the only thing that connects you to the fish is the sharpness of your hook. But I found the hooks that I like using, I'm confident. And I think, again, when you sat there waiting, you're not questioning, oh, is my hook all right? Is my hook sharp? Find the ones that you like and what you've got confidence in. That's the most important part, in my opinion. You know, if you're sat there thinking, if there was one there, I'm going to hook it, I know my hook's sharp, then I think that's so important, especially in the winter time. And then going a bit further down, it's from Steve. Guru's Natural Ligger or Skimmers are out now. I don't know what they're called. So I'll tell you who would be the best person to ask now, the more I think about it, Matt Godfrey, because he was the one who had obviously the biggest hand in developing all these floats. He would know, if you just said, what one is the Gloucester wire stem float, fibre bristle, he'd be able to tell you. And I think the biggest thing with them as well is the body's a balsa rather than foam. So, but he would be able to tell you 1,000,000%. Matt Godfrey. Why didn't I think of that before? So yeah, message Matt and he'd tell you the name of them. And then a bit further down is from Brian. I may have missed this, but what line are you using? Rig line seems in short supply in certain strains. Yes, it definitely does. So what I was touching on a minute ago, when it comes to my Hooklength line, I've only ever used 2, Match Winner, and then that got discontinued. Luckily, again, one of my good mates, Will, yeah, mate, you got any line I can have? Yes, I've got you some absolute legends. So I was quite fortunate with that, if that makes sense. But then again, whenever I've got amazing expanders, mate, I've got some good expanders, I'll drop them off at Gold next. It swings and roundabouts. But yes, I had my Match Winner for a long time, and then eventually I ran out of it. So I started using my tournament rig line, and I'll be honest, apart from the colour, I couldn't really see any difference. Me Match Winner was almost like a very, very light greeny colour. That's how I describe it. Whereas my tournament rig line's clear. That was, I'll be honest, hand on heart, as soon as I'm tying it, if it had been wrapped around a Match Winner spool, I wouldn't have ever known. It would only been the colour that it'd give it away. But exactly what you said. One, rig line, I've struggled again. And John Cook, one of our lads, I messaged him, John, can you get me some? He's managed to get me some sort of 018. But yes, it is in, short supply. And the other thing is, again, like cost-wise, I can cost it in my mind. I can go and buy it. Doesn't bother me one bit because I'm happy with it. I'm confident with it. But when it comes to what I like using for my rig line, again, it's expensive, you know. Whereas the Supernatural, the Guru one, they were bringing this out whilst I was there. And again, a good friend, Robbie Taylor, we tend to like the same things. So we like the same hooks, we like the same line. When, you know, there was sort of engage, Rob was a bit like me. We just tend to like even like landing nets, we tend to like the same thing. So when we was using sort of that 400 frame with the 500 net, we're very similar, I think, in what we do like and what we don't like. And I know that Robbie was absolutely raving about it. He said, honestly, Paul, when it comes out, use it. I know you won't use anything else. And purely on Robbie's recommendation, because again, he's never going to lie to me, if that makes sense. He actually sent me some in the post to try, and it's brilliant. You know, I absolutely love it. So again, when it comes to tying your rigs, that's 6-7 quid a spool, 6 quid a spool, I want to say. Whereas this one, I don't know how much it is a spool. It might be 11-12 quid. It might not be as much as 15 quid, but I know it's a lot more expensive, if that makes sense, for the same amount of line. But for me, I've used it for so long and I'm so confident in it, I'll only ever use that for my hooks until I can't get it. But for my rig line, I've been using it, and sort of that's the perfect place for me to try my lines, you know, see if I like them. When my shots are on it, does it damage easy? You know, when you go through a bit of a snag, does it fray up easy? That has passed with flying colours, if that makes sense. It's so abrasion resistant. Shots stay on it really, really nicely. It don't ping off. It don't damage. It's absolutely perfect. So if you wasn't, what was I going to say? If you haven't got 800 million hooks tied by one line that you've been using for a long time and you're mad confident in, you know, if you said to me, well, you know, I'm just going to try mono now, I'd say use that, you know, because again, it's a lot cheaper. And I would say, you know, it might not go out of stock as much. I don't know. But what I use, my Supernatural for my rig line, and obviously my tournament for my hook lengths. So yes. So Brian, just answer my question. Thank you. But again, I hope it helps. Like, I'd highly recommend both and not had any problems with them. And that's ultimately so much of fishing, whether it matters in the water, it matters, of course it matters, but so much of it is in your head. If you're thinking, I'm really happy with that, I've used it, I've not been broke, it's when you've been like, I can't believe that it snapped me. When you've done that a few times, very, very difficult to change. And again, when you sat there waiting for one bite to not blank, you know, which might win you the section, and it's like, and you pick it up and you think, one, I want to get it in because I don't want to blank. But that fish could be worth 50 quid to me, you know, if you win the match, 200 quid. Like Andy in his final, when he was on that last fish, you know, that's the difference between winning 10 grand or 50 grand. And I'm watching the way he's playing it. Never in his mind is he thinking that's going to come off or I'm going to get broke. That is priceless when you're fishing, when you know you hook someone, whether it's one fish to not do any good, whether it's one fish to win you whatever. The most important part is when it's like that, you just think, well, I just winded him in, you know, I'm going to take my time winding him in, but he's not going to fall off. I'm 1,000,000% confident. That bit is priceless in your mind. So whether your hook cost another 25p or your line cost a little bit more, I'd pay all of that just so that in my little peanut head, when it does that, all I'm thinking is right, just make this one count. And then I get back out and try and catch another one. So again, I'm not a big fan of change. Anyone that's known me, it took me, I don't know how long, 2-3 years before I changed from a 16 Super MWG to a QM1. I'm not a big fan of change. And when I find something that I like, I'm very, very reluctant to change. Again, when it comes to these hooks, these, you know, this 14 Kaizen, that now that's the only hook I'd ever use. I've probably got them kicking around somewhere, but the hook that I used before that was a Corum S3 hook, and they were discontinued. And I had like little stockpile, anything that I like that I find like a good shot. When I find like my 13s are really, really nicely cut, I always stock up. And at that point, I didn't have to buy me hooks, whereas my old S3 hooks, I was so confident in them. They were so sharp and they were an eyed hook. And those were the hooks that I used for maggots all of the time. And Adam said to me first, Paul, you need to use these Kaizens. They're better than what you're using. And I was like, no, I don't want to change. I like what I'm using. And then Pem said to me, Paul, you need to use these Kaizens. They're better than what you use. And I was like, nope. I want to use what I want to use. And eventually with me, that's always what happens. Eventually, I changed because I've still got, I don't know, there's probably 500-600 hooks over there somewhere. So I'll show you the sort of mess that's over there. It's in there somewhere. I know them hooks are there. And I got some to try them. And I'm thinking, I ain't been using these hooks for 2 years, Paul. What have you been doing? Like, they're so much better because they're so much sharper. And as soon as I changed, all my other hooks binned. I'm not going to use them. So my problem is sometimes, well, most of the time, I'm too slow to change. But I think that's what I'm touching on. So I'd rather be like that and be without maybe the right thing rather than changing all the time and never having confidence in anything. So where are we now? So this one's from Steve. Got some sun and temperature protected match winner in all diameters, 5+ spools each. That's the biggest thing, is if you like what you like, all of the time you've got it, you don't have to worry. But when you're looking and you think, this is not good, I haven't got anything, and they don't make it anymore, that's when it's sort of panic stations, if that makes sense. But yeah, just try and find, what you like. And when you like something, stock up a little bit on it, because there's no saying how long you're going to be able to have it. It's lovely when you're going into the tackle shop and it's always in stock, but the second something else comes out, now all of a sudden it's like, oh, panic buying toilet rolls, panic buying match winner to make sure you've got enough. So going further down, this one's from Will. Hi Paul, what mil drop below the hook would you use on the pellet waggler? 16 or 14 hook, 8 mil or 6 mil pellet. So personally, Will, I don't use 6 mils a lot, but whether I was using a 6 mil or an 8 mil, I'll show you. So I don't have, I'll be honest, a big drop. I would say it's just below, like almost level with the bottom of the bend of the hook, if that makes sense. So that's a 3-foot one. Let's get a 2-foot one, so it'll be a little bit easier to show you. And then there you'll be able to see, I've got like a green pin. I don't know if you can see that. Yeah, green pin and a black pin. The green pin is my loop and the black pin's onto my hook. So I know, as mad as it sounds, I know what pin I'm taking off. If I took my black one off, all them hooks are gone then. Well, they ain't gone, but it just take a little bit of time to obviously put them back on your spool. So again, I can loop me hook off just with my green pin, pop it through my loop again, and just pop it back into my foam, like away from my line, if that makes sense. So I know nothing's damaged. So that hook, if I can show you, right, what's going to be the best one? So can you see that? So it's literally right on like the bend of the hook, if that makes sense. So let's try and do it. So it's literally in line with the bend of the hook, if that makes sense. I don't like it too far away. So right on the bend of the hook, literally just so there's sort of enough, there's a little bit of movement there, but it's sort of the band is basically, I would say, if you lined it up, where's my little needle? I'm going to need like a little close-up camera like that, aren't I, so I can show you. So if you can let me move my try and move my fingers out. I don't know what way I'm going. That's the one. So you'll be able to see there, basically the band. I can't stop shaking. I'm sorry about that. Oh, just do it like that, Paul. That's even easier. Right, hold that there like that. So the band is basically level with the bend of the hook, if that makes sense. And that's just the way that I like tying it. I know it's not the nicest thing to talk about it, but it's the reality a lot of the time, especially when you're fishing for big carp. Obviously, they're old fish. When they're all new, you know, their mouths are immaculate, but sometimes their mouths are not in the best condition. And I think if it's too far away, they suck the pellet in without actually sucking your hook in. But whether I was fishing with a 6mm, 8mm coppins, 8mm screttings, 6mm screttings, you know, screttings or coppins, I'd only ever tie my hooks that way. I've never been a fan of like having, say, like 5mm gap between the bottom of the bend of the hook and my pellet, if that makes sense. Never been a fan of that. I just found that, I'll be honest, I just miss more bites. One thing that I think is important when you are fishing with bigger pellets on the hook, sort of that, the best band that I found, I'll be honest, is a Drennan mini band. And the reason being, I think if you use a too small and thick band, I think you lose fish, because when you hook one, the pellet doesn't come out of the band. But what you don't want is to be whacking your waggler and using maybe a medium Drennan band and your pellet's falling off all of the time. You want that nice balance so that, you know, when you hook a fish, it basically, when the hook and the pellet's in the fish's mouth, if it tries to move the pellet comes out of the band. If it's on there and sort of don't come off, I think you lose fish because they've almost used the pellet to dislodge the hook. But likewise, you don't want one where your pellet's permanently coming off. So personally, that Drennan mini band is perfect. Stay on nicely, but you don't lose a lot of fish. But that's how I always tie me pole hook lengths or waggler hook lengths. Just, you know, hold the band and then the hook just above it, and then I go through my knotless knot. I can actually show you how I tie it if. Give me 1 second. So, got some Drennan bands. Got me hooks. It's like it's like your little card collector, isn't it? So there's my 16 hooks. So I'm going to try my best to show you. So I've got some 018, that's perfect. So again, how I tie this is a bit weird compared to how most people tie their hooks. But if I wanted it 3 foot, obviously I'm going to make sure that I use more than 3 foot a line, so like 3 foot 10 inch, 4 foot. But I'm not going to make it that long because obviously I just want to show you how I tie my hook. So I'm going to cut a bit of line off. Again, my 018 line, and then my bands, little Drennan mini, and then I've got some here, obviously my little Drennan micro ones. They're for like my 16 Super LWGs, but all the time I'm using an MWG. Want that Drennan mini one. So if you've never tied a hook like this before, it's going to be a bit weird. But once you get used to it, it's so much easier. I shouldn't have done this because this is like a proper fiddly way of tying your hook. So I'm going to get my band, slide my band on the line first, like so. So I've got my band on my line. Then get my hook and lie this bit of line next to the shank of the hook. So that's what it's going to look like. It's going to be so difficult to be able to show this on camera. Wondering if I do it right in front of me. Let me see if I can do it. So here's a good place. So now what I do is make a loop. Remember, everything's going to look backwards on this screen. So make a loop and hold it like so. So there. And then with me tag end, I go through my loop and through the eye of the hook. Yeah. And then through them loops. And then now my band will be sort of on that bit of line. So again, with my tag end, I can basically make my loop how I want it. And now with these fingers, I'm going to basically move them to those fingers. So again, just like my spade hook, make my loops come towards me. And then you'll be able to see that I've got that loop and that tag. Don't worry about that tag. And then I pull my tag end to make my band in position where I want it. So basically, that's where I'm going to hold it. So my band is basically level with the bottom of my hook, if I can show you. It's so fiddly to stand up and try and do this. So now I'm going to grab the tag end, bend of the hook, and my band, putting it in position where I want it. So when I release that, I've got a loop. And then now start my knotless knot. So that's what you want it to look like. It's so difficult to show you this. But that loop's coming off the back of the hook. So then now do me turns down my hook. So keep whipping. So this is basically your knotless knot. And then I'm going to have to sit down a second because I need to move my fingers and get them closer to the bend of the hook so I can carry on my whippings. So and when you get further down, just have to poke your finger to push the whippings down, and then 2, 3 back up the hook. And then now see that loop, push the loop to open it up so I can basically see the back of the hook, if that makes sense, like that. And then I go through the loop, through the eye, pull it tight, and that is what you're ended up with. So you've got a loop above it, obviously knotless knot, and your tag end. Then now I put my finger like that on my thumb. So my thumb, like so. So that loop, I'm making sure that when I pull this tag end, that loop's going to close down, but it's going to close on the back of the hook, if that makes sense. This will be fiddly when you first do it, but honestly, it's and trim that loop off. And again, if you're going to tie it like this, the line you use is using that, what's it called now, mono, using mono rather than your coated polymer. That's how it is. Now that one, I'd retie it because it's just where I've been up and down, like moving my fingers a bit. My band's too close to the back of the hook, so I would just retie that. The other way you can do it, if you want to, as long as it's not too close to the hook, is by pulling it with your pin. Just lock the knot down a little bit more. It won't slide out because you're using mono. It's like that, if that makes sense. But yeah, it is a bit fiddly to tie. I'm just going to trim that one off. Normally, just by moving your finger down, the whippings will come undone. I don't throw my hook away. Best way of getting this off now, if you've ever retied it, I've got one down here, is again using my pliers. You know, if you want to retie your hook, is I hold it like so. You see where the whippings are? Just get a lighter, turn it on, and it'll all come off, and then you can retie that hook. But I'll show you how easy it is to tie when I'm not slowing down, if that makes sense. So get my hook out, just a bit of line, and then this time I'll talk you through it as I'm doing it. So line through the band, pick my hook up, again lie it away from you, so you've got the bend of the hook. So now you're grabbing the bend of the hook, if that makes sense. So if you're right-handed, you hold the hook in your right and you've got the bend of the hook that way, if that makes sense. And then now fold a loop above it, go straight into pulling my tag end through the loop and the eye of the hook. Then now get my tag end, get my band in the position that I want, which is there. Now grab it all together. I've just got to come down here because my light's not in the right place. Make sure that when you go over around the hook for the first time, that your loop doesn't twist. As long as it comes off the back of the hook, it's absolutely fine. And when you get closer down, you just need to move your fingers just so you can see that shank where you're whipping your whips down, and then whip back up 3 times, open the loop up, make sure that it's straight, back through the loop and the eye, pull it down, thumb through your loop so that your loop's going to tighten down to the back of your hook. Hold it in position, like so. Pull it down tight. Trim that tag end off. And then there, if I line the hook up, you'll be able to see that one's just off like the bottom of the hook, if that makes sense. This makes your eyes go proper funny. But that is basically how it sits. So it does take a little bit of practice doing it that way, but that's how I tie all my banded hook lengths, if that makes sense, because you've only got to go through the hook twice. Whereas the way that I used to do it, you have to go through 3 times. And if you're trying to tie like 016 to a 16 Super LWG, it won't do it. If you're trying to tie 018 to an 18 Super MWG, the eye's not big enough. Whereas doing it that way is fiddly, but that's just sort of my own way that I made up of tying my hook and never let me down. It don't slip. Again, if you tie it like that and you go to pull the band and it all comes undone, the reason it's doing that is because of the line you're using is like that coated polymer, or say fluorocarbon. If you use monofilament, once it's locked down, that's it, it won't move. But basically, yeah, that's how I tie me banded hook length. So where are we now? So this one's from Nigel. I find the supernatural kinks easily in lower diameters when tying a hook with a tire. Am I doing something wrong? So biggest thing, Nigel, I don't use a hook tire. I've only ever tied them with my hands. I don't know if it's when you're pulling it that's the bit that's too tight and that's why it's kinking. But honestly, like if I tied this one now, it wouldn't kink. But we've done it earlier, but I'll show you how I tie my spade and you might be able to learn to do it like this. I think but I know that not everyone's eyes are as good. Like my hands, I always joke, like my hands are like little girls' hands, you know, as a decorator. Some people's hands, they were made for like hitting people and building big stone buildings, you know, got great big lumps of hammers of hams, if that makes sense. The tying it is fiddly for, you know, some blokes. I totally get that. And my eyes are okay, you know, touch wood. But I'll show you how I do it now and give it a go. You might just find it a little bit easier. So I'm going to tilt it down just so you can see. But again, everything's going to look a bit backwards on here. So I get my line. So my 018, going to use a 14 Kaizen. Again, the only real difference about how I'm going to tie my hook like this, if I was using 010, 012 and a smaller hook, obviously I don't need to pull as hard with my pliers. So get your hook. And then with my finger, being right-handed, again, everything's backwards with the camera, unfortunately. It's almost like I need one above my head. But now I make a loop in my line, like so, and pinch it between my finger and thumb. Then I put my hook through, so the point of my hook has gone through the middle of that loop. And then with my loop now, with my fingers, I just move it towards me slightly, and pinch my hook, and then my loop now is going that way, obviously through my fingers, back out to my tag end. But what's important is it's not all twisted around each other. And then go around once, twice, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 6, 7 turns, and then pinch it. And this is what you end up with. So let me cut it off so you can see at this point. Actually, what I'll do it like normal and then I'll cut it off and show you again. So now what's important with your tag end is it goes from your eyes through the loop that way. It doesn't come through the loop back up. So tag end from you through the loop away from yourself, and then Now, this is the bit where, to make that loop smaller, I don't pull the tag end, I actually pull the main line. But because it's not under any strain, if that makes sense, where obviously I haven't formed my loop, it can't, there's no friction there. And then now with my fingers, I just tidy the knot up and make sure that the knot, the line is coming off the front of the spade. So a little bit too much line there. And then when I'm happy with it, now with my flat pliers, get my tag end, put that in my pliers, and then with my fingers above it, I just sort of fold the line over my finger and just pull it tight. So just double check that. So weird when you sort of start stop and when you never used to sort of start stopping, if that makes sense. So now pull it tight that way, like that ain't going anywhere. And then now put me hook in my pliers, if that makes sense. My tag end stuck in there. Just fold it over my hook, that's all. And then put my hook in it. And obviously now pull it tight. Like so. Now that's not going to slip, it can't slip. I've tied it down as tight as it'll go. And now I'll just trim my tag end off. So there it is. Spot on. So the few things really when you're tying your hook by hand is, firstly, you obviously want to weigh. So take my line, put my weight on it. Now I can move it, if that makes sense, but it's not sliding all over my table, so I can get the tension on my hook length that I want. So now with this hand, sort of, and my finger, make a loop like so, and then with my hook, what I'm going to do is I'm going to trim my line off so you can see this. So everything just takes a bit of practice, that's all. But can you see like my hook is going through, it's like in the middle of this loop, if that makes sense. Like so, it's not like one end or the other. And then now with my loops, see if I twist them towards me and push my fingers together, can you see how my line's separated? It's not like twisted and buckled like so. You know, there's no twist in my line. And if there is, that's another thing of why your hook won't tie right, because you've already got a loop. You know, your line's twisted over itself, if that makes sense. So make my loop, and then now with this hook, so I hold my hook like that in my left hand, and then I'll put it over the point like so. It's so weird, like looking at what you're doing, then trying to look to make sure that you've done it. And then now when I pinch it together, like that's why that bit there will be under tension, but you can see that they're separate. And then now, I'm not going to be able to do this like this because that needs to be under tension. And then now you're sort of making your loop, but that there is, you know, this is going to be impossible now because it's not under tension. So when I go to do my turns, I've got to try and keep that bit tight. That's why you need your weight. But it's like anything. Where were we to? It's like anything, Nigel. It's just a bit of practice doing it. But that is one thing that I would say, if that's happening, is probably when you're pulling your hook tire, it's under too much tension. One little tip I will give you, if it's happening and you try and do it by your hand and you think, do you know what, Paul, I can't do that. The only way I can do it is with my loop tire. One thing I will say is get yourself a bit of that stuff. It doesn't have to be the Preston one. It can be any lubricant, but just get yourself some slip lubricant. That one's good. £7 for a bottle that'll last you forever and a day. But I actually use this when I'm putting shot on my hook, on my rig. So again, if I just tilt you a little bit, so put my float on, put my required shot on with my pliers. Then what I do is I have that and just get a little. I ain't got my bowl. Get a little one of these little things. I think Joe got me in from Lakeland, but you know, you find them online, just like a little pot. If you squirt some of that or empty the bottle, you know, take the lid off and just pour some in. What I do then with my liquid is I dip my fingers in it, one thing when you're doing this is wear, if you're going to do a few rigs, either wear an old pair of jogging bottoms or get yourself a bit of kitchen roll and put it over your lap, because when it goes on your clothes, it's not the best. But put your fingers in it and wipe it on the shot. And then when you first move your shot, so like move your float up, again, if you're using a carbon stem float with brand new silicone, then I'll dunk my fingers in that, wipe on the stem of the float and slide my float up, because it stops the friction burn. That's what it is. If it's, you know, sometimes when you slide your float and you hold your rig and it's all twirly whirly, it's because once you've moved it, you've created friction, and that's what's messed the line up. Whereas if you put some of that on your silicone, on your rubbers, and just wipe it on your float, you've only got to do it the first couple of times, and then it's fine. It'll slide and it won't mark the line. So again, if you're making a new rig up, have some of that, wipe it on your float and slide it up. It won't damage your line. But what I use it for is my shot. So wipe it on my shot, and then as I go to move my shot on the line, I just dip my fingers in it, get my shot like just underneath my nail, slide it up, another bit, slide it up. So now all of those shots that I put on via pliers, let's just show you. So what line do we want? So I've got some 018 line there. Got some shot here, some number 8, make it nice and easy. And give me 1 second, because get my kitchen roll. I thought I was prepared. So again, just like a little bit of kitchen roll, just pop that on your lap. But exactly what I'm going to do now, where is it, Nigel? You can do this for when you go to pull your hook tie and stop that friction. So if you wanted to be prepared, obviously have a little pot. What I'm going to do is squirt it on my table like so, just so I've got a bit obviously on the table. And then I'm going to get my line. So now, obviously, let's imagine we've got a float on our line. And then now what I'm going to do is obviously I'm going to make a loop, because that's what I would do. So make my loop, my little loop tie. Trim that off. So now we've got the makings of the best overshot rig going. Joking aside, got our float on the line, say we're going to put 4 number 8s on. And when you're using shot, like I like Balabini's shot because it's deep cut, but it's deep cut and it stays on, you know. So 1 number 8 on the line, put the other number 8 on the line. The nice thing doing this is you can use like the biggest shot on the lightest line, and it's not gonna mark your line, if that makes sense. So 3, 4. So I've got me. It's a bit meant. Again, if it doesn't feel right in your fingers, you know, if it's not cut nicely, if it's not cut deep enough, don't just put it on the line, chuck it away. But again, when you find a good batch of shot, stock up on it. So now we've got, let me get my head out of the way. So actually my forehead's a good one, white forehead. So there you'll be able to see I've got my 4 shot on my line. Now, if I was just to slide this up, that is going to create, you know, a lot of friction on this line. So, but now with my fingers, obviously with our little bit of slip lubricant, this is why you want your bit of kitchen towel on your lap. Or if you've got a lot of shot, you can just wipe it, you know, in your lubricant. But this is the way that I do it. Get some on my fingers, and then with my nail, now slide that up the line, and then I wipe the line as I'm coming back down. Because what that's going to do, every time I wipe the line as I'm coming back down, is creating a film on this line, and that's going to get in that indentation of my shot. So as I go to move it, it's quite tight, and then as I start moving it, it just goes. Obviously, where you've got this lubricant now in your split, if that makes sense. So now do the same thing again. So again, just wipe the shot. So go up another like 6 inch or so, wipe the line as I'm coming back down, wipe the line as I'm coming back down. So now those shot are on brand new line, but this bit here where I've used this lubricant, there is no damage at all on my line. So now I've formed my loop, if that makes sense, which I'm gonna attach my staple, obviously put it on my rig winder, make sure my knot's formed correctly, which it is. Put it nice and tight. Take my time when I'm cutting my tag end off now, because this is my finishing loop. Obviously the first loop that we tied, now I'm going to cut it off. So once I've slid this shot up and put a nice a good loop on, so I ain't overly worried about my first one, but my finish loop, if that makes sense. Just want to take that extra bit of time, make sure that my knots form nicely, and make sure my tag end's how I want it. So now I've just got obviously the shot on my head. I've got my shot there on that white bit, but you'll be able to see I've obviously got a bit of a gap to my loop tie. So now what I'll do is get rid of me bit of kitchen roll. I actually put me loop tire in between my legs, and I hold this bit of line just so I don't damage on my table like so. And now what I'm going to do is, again, a bit of my lubricant, not a lot this time because it's already there, but as I slide it back down to my loop tire, I'm just creating, you know, that little bit on the line, just so that when I move my shot, they all move now, but they only move under tension, if that makes sense. So now I can move it when I'm fishing, no problems whatsoever. You'll be able to see. What can you see? Let's just cut it off, just so it's easier. You'll be able to see, like, I've moved that shot, that one there, this side, quite, you know, can slide this shot easy now. Like so, I can get my head out of the way, Paul. There. So I can move these shots as easy as I want, but they don't move off their own accord, and they're not going to ping off, if that makes sense. So now I can move it however I want when I'm fishing, but I've never got to worry about it damaging my line, and I wouldn't be able to do that if it weren't for that lubricant. So that's what I would say. Give that a go first. Like, use your hook tire how you do it, and then before you close the knot down, just put a bit on the table. Obviously, just grab it on your fingers, wipe it over the knot, slide it down, and I bet that stops it kinking. So give that a go, because I think that will help you, Nigel. So where are, I need to put lids on stuff, because what happens is I end up with 400 shot all over the floor, 400 bands all over the floor. Worse still, hooks, hence the reason I wear trainers in my tackle room. And yes, I have had that in the past when my mum goes, Paul, is this yours? No, it's not mine, somebody else's. But I'm the only one who goes fishing, so it can't be someone else's. So where are we now? So Match Fishing Pioneer. All right, mate. You're right. I hope you're keeping well. A pensioner. No, yeah, pensioner. I thought you said pioneer then. It's from Steve. What are you cooking, Joe, for tea? Oh no, but I need to figure something out, to be fair. We'll probably get takeaway. Shouldn't say this actually. We've had takeaway the last 2 nights, and it's not the best thing, but again, when it's so hot, it's like, go shopping with 1,000. No, thank you very much. But to be fair, I did go and get myself some lunch. Got myself some little crusty rolls, some honey roast ham. It's upstairs. I got around to eating yet. But I will figure something out, Steve. Got to. So this one's from Will. Brilliant. Thanks, Paul. Very helpful advice on the pellet waggler hook length and bands. No problems at all, Will. And this one's from Kev. Great this video, Paul. Cheers. No problems whatsoever, Kev. It's from Steve. Don't forget to like the video before you leave, guys. That'd be mega if you could. Thank you ever so much. And then from Nigel, cheers, Paul. I'll give that a try. That's what I would suggest. So we've been going a lot longer than I actually thought, an hour and 43 minutes. I didn't mean to take this much of your Saturday up. So I am going to carry on sorting all my method feeder hook lengths out. I did title this one, and it's the one thing we ain't spoke about a lot. So What I will say with me method feeder hook lengths, I know this is going to sound a little bit pathetic, is that the right word? But the ones that I have in this little hook length box, because it's an older one, you'll be able to do it with the newer ones, I think, is the top one there where my finger is here, where I'm tapping. That one's 3-inch. And then this one over this side, as daft as it sounds, it's a pin wider than 3-inch. And more often than not, that is a really, really good one for me. And then the bottom one down here, that's a 4-inch one. But the length, when you're fishing with ground bait and maggots, sometimes 4-inch can be too long. And that pin over 3 inches can be really, really good. So I just wanted to mention that when it comes to fishing ground bait and dead maggots on the hook, experiment with the length of your hook length, because your standard 4-inch ones, they can be a bit too long. And if you're getting an odd little, little sign where you think they're seeing out my feeder and I'm not catching it, one, obviously, first and foremost, check the point of your hook, make sure it's sharp. But the other thing is mess around with the length of your hook length. One thing I want to touch on as well, just quickly touching on it, for the lads that subscribe to our channel on Match Focus, the Belingi video is probably one of the best videos when it comes to what I think is so important in the fact of like holding your line. But for those, again, you might not have seen it, again, on Match Focus or not on Match Focus, the Blake's video that we done, I think it was at Packington Summers Fishery, method feeder. Have a watch of that, because I sort of fish ground bait and dead maggots there. But like holding that line, so important. That again, apart from like the sharpness of your hook, obviously your casting technique, that makes a big difference, being able to cast it in the right place. But holding that line, the difference it makes is unbelievable. They'll be on your bait so quickly. But they're like a few little tips when it comes to, your method feeder hook length. So, yeah, I'm just going to carry on now, topping up my hook lengths. Say I've had a good morning. I've done all my elastics. I'm really pleased with that. I've got all them sorted now. So they should be bedded in and working perfect for our Fish Sale final at Willingshurst in, I think it's about a month's time. So, yeah, I've got them done. Now it's just a case of topping up all my hook lengths and, yeah, trying to make sure I'm prepared as possible. But if you're out tomorrow, best of luck. I am going to start doing a few more of these, just as and when I get the time. I didn't probably promote this one as well as I should have, but what I will do in future is I'm going to sort my calendar out, because what I'd like to do is almost do one of these a week, just so where I can sort of have a catch up with everybody. Again, if anyone's got any questions sort of on a week-to-week basis, just nice to have a chatter. And I think we all talk about, I love watching fishing. I love people catching the fish, but this element of it, I do feel like a lot of people could easily add sort of 15-20% to their fishing if they ain't got to do as much as what I do, but just spending that little bit of time preparing. And I know it's probably more of the boring side of fishing, doing your prep, but I think it's so important. And again, I can just keep you company as and when you're doing it, maybe inspire you to think, I'm going to sit down. I'm going to have chasing. You might not have chasing status on, but just sit down and spend an hour or two doing your gear, because there is such a nice feeling when you sat down and you think, well, do you know what? I've got everything covered. And when you're on them few fish and you know that, especially if you haven't been as prepared as before, when it comes to like your method feeder fishing, if you've got a few hooks tied up, definitely going to catch a few more, because instead of thinking, can't change my hook because I ain't got any more tied, when you look and you think, yeah, I've got a few hooks, and then all of a sudden and you start getting a few more bites, it is rewarding that that you've caught them extra few fish because you sat there and made sure you've got enough hooks for your match. But yes, basically moving forward, I am planning on doing a few more of these just to talk a little bit more about the prep side of it. Just sort of keep you updated again as and when you're going fishing, little questions week to week as you're going along. But I will promote the next one a little bit better. So what I'll do is but I actually done this one quite well. Put it on YouTube, so I like schedule it so you know when it's coming up. But again, I'll advertise it on our Match Focus Facebook page that we're going to go live at whatever time on the 10th of August. I'd like to, hand on heart, I would have liked to have done this sort of on a Friday evening, from like 6 till 8, because I know most people that's their time where sort of the kids gone to bed, done all your working week, you're doing your prep ready for the weekend. But unfortunately, I haven't got every single day free. But what I'll do is there'd be some will be on a Saturday if I've got a Saturday off, some will be on Thursdays, Fridays, maybe an odd night on a Monday. But what I'll start doing is trying to put it in my calendar every week. And then as long as I let you know in advance, this one's going to be Tuesday at whatever time, then at least you can expect it coming. But I am planning on doing a few more of these because I enjoy it, rather than just sitting here time mixed by myself with my tunes on. Hopefully I can help you out a little bit as we're going along. But yes, best of luck this weekend. Obviously, if you're out tomorrow, make sure you got your sun cream on. I will be down here with my little babies, but I know in a couple of weeks I feel so happy that I've had a little bit of time off, got up to date with all my kit, because I know then I've got like Moncall coming up, so I've got doing a live match at Meadowlands on Lambsdown. I'm really looking forward to that. And then after that it'll be Willingshurst practicing for my Fish South final, and I just know that once I start doing my fishing, I'll just be so thankful that I spent this little bit of time doing it. But yes, hope you enjoyed watching it. I'm just going to double check that we haven't got any more questions before I leave you. So last one, enjoyed it. Cheers, Mr. P. Back to packing boxes for me. Enjoy, Steve. Enjoy. And then from Nigel, I find it relaxing tying hooks in the evening when the kids are in bed, nothing on, and just having YouTube playing in the background. 1,000,000%. It's sort of almost, even though I work in fishing, as mad as it sounds, this is my break from fishing and the reality of life. Just plug myself in, listen to my music, and yeah, really, really enjoy it. But I'll love you and leave you, let you enjoy the rest of your Saturday. Best of luck if you're out tomorrow, and I will catch up with you soon. But yes, keep an eye out. I'm going to post it on my Facebook page, our Match Focus one, when I'm planning on doing it. But also I should be able to figure out where I can put it on YouTube, and that way you'll know when we're going to be doing our next one. But yes, enjoy your weekend, and I'll see you all soon. Take care.